Hi guys, this is Brad One Punch Pickett, and you're listening to the BBYK podcast.
You're welcome, Internet. This is Viet Duan, and welcome to another edition of Face the Facts, a series where we interview professional athletes and ask them the tough questions donks like Luke Thomas are too busy building snowmen to ask. Now, some of our listeners have asked us, what is the meaning of life? Eudaimonia. Why don't you think about that one? This is Face the Facts, and we're proud to promote true investigative podcasting. We ask the hard-hitting questions like, who would win in a fight, Mickey O'Neill or Tyler Durden? We know that our tenaciousness might scare off some people, which is why we respect anyone that comes onto our show and chats with us. Which brings us to this episode's guest, and it was such a blast getting to chat with a true legend of the sport, Mr. Brad One Punch Pickett. We talk about the love of the fight game, the oversaturation of interim titles, and life mottos. Brad was super awesome and also very gracious with his time. Enjoy. All right, we should be good. We talked about it. You had a storied career. You're one of two men to beat who many consider the pound-for-pound best fighter alive today, Demetrious Johnson. I actually wanted to segue into that real quick, just kind of pick your brain about this. Demetrious and Dana White, the UFC, they've kind of butt heads lately. Have you been keeping up with that story?
A little bit. I know that Dana White was trying to get him to fight TJ Dillashaw, and obviously Demetrious wasn't that keen on the idea. He said he would fight TJ Dillashaw, but he has to fight someone else at that weight class first because he feels it's unfair on the challenges within that weight class. And then I think Dana White has turned around to say that he was going to scrap the division, I believe. So I don't know anything more than that. Or is there anything more? I'm not too sure.
Demetrious seemed to be very candid. He came out on social media, wrote a long post about, I guess, giving us an insider's perspective of what fighter negotiations are like. And he accused Dana White and the UFC management of trying to bully him into taking a fight. And then there's Dana White, who came out and was like, we're just trying to put on the biggest money fights, and that would be Demetrious Johnson versus TJ Dillashaw.
Yeah, well, me is how I address every situation. I always see things from both sides of the story. So I can see it as being a promoter and being Dana White. You're trying to put on the biggest fights as you can to generate some revenue, especially now with that they've been bought out. WIME want to try and recoup as much money as can, so they need these big money fights. And as a fan of the sport, I think the most interesting fight for me would be TJ Dillashaw versus Demetrious Johnson. But then I see on the other side of the coin where Demetrious Johnson says no. I mean, it's not a case that he wouldn't fight TJ Dillashaw. He thinks that it's a bit unfair on the sport, which I back him on that as well. If you want to make it a sport where rankings count, a guy from a division above can't, unless he was the champion, I'd say, and wants to try to do a champion belt at two weights, can't get immediate title shot. As in, I must admit, when I went down to flyweight, there was maybe some, for me being one of the guys that beat Demetrious Johnson, I could have called and said, I want to have an immediate title shot and all that sort of stuff, and I didn't, So, because I've already beat Demetrious Johnson before, so I had that angle. I tried to fight at that weight class. The weight class and the styles of fights didn't really suit my style, so I struggled. You never know. TJ Dillashaw may struggle even making the weight. He's never made that weight before. Championship weight at the weight class below, it's like, it's a bit risky. You've never made that weight before. And then I can see it Demetrious Johnson's point of view. He's on the verge of making history in title defenses. And so why would he even want to risk fighting some guy who's never made the weight class before? I see what he's saying. He's got no problems with fighting TJ Dillashaw, but as long as he makes the weight and fights on first, and then he'll fight him. So I see it from both sides of the coin.
In your career, did you ever experience anything like that, like what Demetrious Mouse Johnson was describing? Maybe not bullying, but do you ever feel pressured into taking a certain fight?
I never felt pressured by the company to take a fight. Once I felt pressured that I wanted to take a fight, just otherwise I'll be put on the shelf for a bit longer if I refused an opponent. And that's when I was supposed to fight Henry Briones again for the second time this time when he pulled out. And they're different guys. I said to yes to everyone. And then they offered me Yuri Alcantara, right? And I was getting closer and closer to the fight, you know. And for me, I know myself. I know stylistically that matchup sucks for my style, but I was already at an American top team training for Henry Briones. I was out there for such a long time away from my family and stuff, and I felt I could not fight, if that makes sense. And if I'd have turned that fight down, because they offered me 4 different guys and I said yes to all of them, and then they didn't materialize, and then it offered me Yuri Alcantara, and I was like, I didn't like the matchup, but I'm like, oh, fuck it, I've got to do it. And yeah, it kind of proved me right. That fight was the worst fight of my whole career. So yeah, I wish I didn't take that fight. They didn't pressure me or bully me into taking that fight at all. I just felt like I had to because if I'd have said no, I could have been put on the shelf, you know. So I didn't want that to happen either.
I feel like your perspective, and you have a more of an old school mentality, and it's if a guy wants to move down or up a weight class, he has to kind of prove that not only can he make it in that weight class, he has to have a fight under his belt. He has to prove it in the division first before he can get a title shot. But as you mentioned earlier, with the new management, do you not feel like this management is pushing more and more for these not necessarily meritorious matchups, but these money fights? The big name fights. I will bring up your fellow countryman Michael Bisping. It's been a bit of an enigma for the UFC and how he has treated his tenure as a UFC champion. He fought Hendo, who many fans didn't think Dan Henderson at that point in his career deserved the title shot. He beat him to retain the belt. He was supposed to get a super fight matchup between Georges St. Pierre. It doesn't look like that's happening anymore. So do you think that this is a case of the new management, they're pushing this, or are we just in new territory? The UFC is a lot bigger than it's ever been before, so this is just kind of, we're feeling things out.
I think it is definitely new territory. The sport has definitely changed. Obviously, with the sale of the company being $4 billion, I think a lot of fighters been holy crap, that's been selling for a lot of money. So it kind of like put a bit more power into the fighters in this aspect is where, don't get me wrong, when it was owned by Dana White and the Fertittas, you know, it was like, it's a massive, it's hard to explain it, I know it's a massive company, but you kind of like felt a little bit more personal to it, like you knew the owners, so it was like working for a local business in a sense. So like it's like maybe working for your local pub where you know the owners and you get on with them really well. So you felt a bit more personally obliged to the company. Where now you don't even know who the owners are. It's such a corporate thing, and they don't look at you personally. They look at you as a number and how much money can you generate as a number, and that's what it is. It's just completely changed. The sport's changed dramatically, I think, in the last year. All to do with the sale of the UFC. I think now, as a big, when you buy a company for as much as they did, they need to try and recoup some of the money that they spent, and all they care about is putting on the fights that people want to see. So if it is a cow versus a pig, you know, that's going to generate 50 million. Let's put that on. You know, I mean, that's what effectively was going to happen. And that's why they created the 145-pound division for the females, because they thought, obviously, with Cyborg, that will generate a lot of money. So it's turned away. Obviously, with WIME, they obviously have WWF and the wrestling. It's all about, it's an entertainment. It's more and more an entertainment sport rather than a ranking system within the UFC, you know. That's what the change is, you know. Number one contender not necessarily going to get the next shot. It's more about watch what fights the fans want to see. So in a way, it's the fans' fault as well. You can't blame just the promotion. It's the fans' fault as well. The fights they want to see, like George St. Pierre versus Michael Bisping over Michael Bisping versus Yoel Romero. So it's the fans, and when I say the fans, it's different. The hardcore fans, don't get me wrong, want to see the number one contender challenge for the title, but it's the casual fans, which the company now are targeting. They're the ones that the company seems to be listening to, because they're the ones who are going to fork out and pay more to do the pay-per-views, where I'll be honest, a lot of hardcore fans probably somehow try and download it or stream it or some way or bootleg it.
For sure. There's definitely a division between your quote-unquote hardcore fans and then your more casual fans. To your point, I think that's why we have this huge spectacle fight that's going to be happening later on this summer, Conor McGregor versus Floyd Mayweather. I don't know if that's a fight the hardcore fans were calling for, but that's a fight that almost everyone has an opinion on, even if they're boxing fans or MMA fans or not. Everyone has an opinion on this fight. So they're reaching an audience that wouldn't tune into your typical UFC fight night card or something like that.
Well, that's Conor McGregor in a nutshell. People wouldn't know what the UFC is, but know who Conor McGregor is. He would create that such a. There's only been, I think, a couple of those sort of stars within the UFC, and one was Ronda Rousey, and the other one was Conor McGregor, who kind of bring the attraction from outside of the general MMA bubble. But that bubble now has got massive. With Conor McGregor. He's the biggest star in the UFC, and he's probably the biggest star in boxing. So, again, that's going to generate the biggest interest, because you have all these UFC fans and MMA fans wanting to watch the fight, and then also you're still going to have a lot of boxing fans. Even the purists, they're still going to watch it. No one's not going to watch this fight just to see what happens. Like what is actually going to happen now. For me, the most entertaining thing about this fight will be the build-up, I think. It'd be quite interesting, the fight as well, but I think the most entertaining thing will be the build-up. Conor McGregor has always been amazing with his build-up to fights, selling a fight and getting in his opponent's head. That's why I think Mayweather was very clever, where he made this not such a far away. I think it's in August, so it's not really that far away. So he doesn't have a massive build up like someone like Aldo did when he fought McGregor. There was a massive long tour and all that sort of stuff. He doesn't have to do that, so it gives McGregor less time to give him a lot of crap and get in his head.
Yeah, I want to circle back to that big fight later. Definitely want to pick your brain about that. I want to get back to you real quick. As we talked about, you one of the enduring fighters, a very long career. It's a very dangerous sport that you participated in. And not everyone gets to leave the game exactly. on their own terms. I felt like you got to do that. I always felt like throughout your career, in victory or loss, you were always very humble and gracious. So I want you to walk us through that. What was that like when your retirement fight? You were in London. What was that like, getting to retire in front of a home crowd?
Well, for me, I think the outcome of the fight that night didn't really matter. It was more a case of just the whole occasion celebrating my career. And that's what it was. And to be honest, it was a very, very emotional thing for me, because I love what I do. I always have. I love competing, and I've always been one of those guys who competes for the fans. I love the fans. I love the interactions with the fans. I like the respect the kind of the sport gives you, kind of thing. So I loved all that. And when the reason was I decided to retire, because when I started getting into sport, it was more a case to see how far I can go. And I see myself climbing up rankings, where okay, right, I become the best in the UK, then I become the best in Europe, then I get signed by the WEC, then I become top 10 in the world at 135, then I get to top 5 in the world at 135. Then I keep trying, nearly getting a title shot, keep on falling over the hurdle. I go down to 125, try and rekindle a fight with Demetrius Johnson down there. That doesn't happen. So I go back to 135. Then I just thought, okay, I'll give it a crack here. I carried on fighting there. And then it kind of like didn't really work out for me. I see myself start slipping down rankings. Then I'm like, you know what, guys? Thanks a lot. I'm a proud person, and it sucks losing. So I felt it was my time to bow out of the sport, and it was nice to bow out with, not a lot of people get to leave, especially as an athlete, get to leave their job intact. A lot of athletes have to retire due to injuries and stuff like that. So it was really nice for me to be able to just get out of the sport without any injuries intact. Now I have a kid, so I have to look after my kid.
That's really important. We do see fighters, a lot of fighters, and fighters are all very proud, and unfortunately some of them do stick in the sport a little past when they probably should. They risk injury by staying in the sport past their time.
Yeah, 100%. Isn't for me also, you get to damage your brand a little bit more as well. So for me, you look at BJ Penn. He's an absolute legend of the sport, but it's kind of hard to watch him fight people like Yari Rodriguez and stuff like that. And even his fight the other week when he fought Dennis Eva, kind of like a match kind of made for him. Dennis Eva's very slow, ploddish and stuff like that, but he still didn't look good in that fight. So for me, it's kind of like it's hard, because I know it is. I get the urge. Your mind thinks you're better than your body is sometimes. For me, I still look at people who are fighting. I think, oh man, that's terrible. What they're doing. But they'll probably beat me in a fight. It's weird to even fathom that. So I know I'm not as good as I was when I was 31. I'm 38 now. So I know that, and it's hard sometimes to swallow that pill. And being a competitor that you have to be good in the sport, it's really hard to let that go.
Do you think some of that is on the support team around the fighter? Like sometimes you gotta have to have that talk.
Yeah, but it's still very hard and personal. That's why I find it really annoying where fans always go, "Oh, that guy should retire." It's hard. You don't understand what goes on in a guy's life sometimes. It's not easy just to retire. He's got a family to feed. It's so hard as an athlete, because when you are building up in any other career, you're a doctor, lawyer, whatever. When you go through the beginning of your career, you're building it up. By the time you hit the 30s or late 30s, you're either one, high up in your company, or two, you have your own company. So it's a bit hard as an athlete, because you get to that age and then it's like, well, see you later. Now you go do something else. So not a lot of fighters have their after fighting plan in front of them. A lot of people, they don't even think about it. They don't want to retire, and then it gets to the stage where sometimes some fighters can't afford to retire. They need to fight to pay bills. So it is a tricky situation for an athlete, and I don't think there's enough support for athletes after retirement. There are in other sports, but I don't think there's maybe enough in MMA, because MMA is still quite a new sport and there's not a lot of people retiring, I guess. But I think there should be a lot more support for retired athletes.
Is that something that you would personally want to get involved in, to try to get some kind of program, or push for some kind of program to be put in place for fighters to kind of transition out of the sport?
Well, I kind of do this anyway. I do this by giving fighters other personal advice, what they should do throughout the careers. When I say I don't manage fighters in such of as an army manager, I'm going to take 20% and I'm going to try to get this patch on your shorts and stuff. It's more a case of I have friends that I train with, like other fighters as well, like Mark D. Casey. I've got a fight here called Nathaniel Wood, who's a Cage Warriors champion and stuff like that. I give them a lot of advice through their career because I've had a long career and I've experienced things, and there's some things that I've done really well, and there's some things that I would have done differently. And it's for me now, my experience within the sport to put back into it and give these younger fighters a bit more advice on their careers, what they should do, and how to market themselves and stuff like that. So yeah, I do a lot in my own way to help new athletes coming through the sport.
Yeah, I think retired fighters like you are going to be instrumental in putting those steps in place for fighters as they transition to the next part of their career. MMA is still a very new sport. If you look at other sports in America, we get the NFL. That's huge here. But if you look at the desk, the analysts that are talking about the sport, you have guys that have retired 20, 30 years ago, older guys that played the sport, and now they're the analyst. And then you go to Fox Sports and you look at the analysts for the UFC, and they're all current fighters. And not just current fighters, a lot of them are current champions. You have Michael Bisping, Daniel Cormier, Tyron Woodley, Dominic Cruz. So that's how young the sport is. We don't really have the older retired guys talking about the sport. Our best analysts are still people that are actively involved. So
exactly. I'm with you on that. You actually make a very good point. I've never really noticed that, but you're very true. I do think there should, like I say, there should be a lot more support for retired athletes coming out to get some of these. I'm not saying that everyone's going to be a good analyst, or everyone's going to be good or articulate in front of the camera, and maybe camera shy some people, so that they should be maybe given a little bit more opportunity rather than giving all these current fighters opportunities, because they're still fighting, they still have a job, So I think maybe that's something the UFC should do and help fighters that are leaving the sport. Like someone like BJ Penn, like help him leave the sport, like they did back before when the company was owned by Lorenzo and stuff. They helped out people like Chuck Liddell, they helped out Matt Hughes, they helped out those type of fighters, so Forrest Griffin, another one. They helped him out with these little roles within the company. But now the company is not Lorenzo and stuff like that. So it's a bit different now. So it's WIME, and I think that's maybe something they could do to help out a lot more.
Yeah, and that would be really good if they did. I think I'm with you in that right now it's their main focus is recouping as much from their investment as possible. I don't know if I think it's just part of the sport. I don't know if it's unfortunate or fortunate. A lot of this is predicated on the fighters being able to sell themselves either through social media or something like that. So you're seeing a lot of fighters increasingly try to get onto social media, maybe start like an online beef with another fighter, trash talking, and trying to sell themselves that way, because that seems to be getting people the money fights, versus I guess the more old school look. You fought this guy, so now you're ranked here, and now you fight a guy above you, and if you beat him, then you move up the rankings, and it's there's a process to that. Now it's like some people, they kind of jump the line a little bit with their mouths, not so much with their fists.
Well, yeah. I mean, like I say, it's the massive change of the sport. It kind of like been like that. But I do think it's very important for fighters to market themselves and build a brand. Because if you have a strong brand while you're fighting, you're still going to live off that brand outside of fighting. So it is very clever. And I think a lot of fighters are understanding this now. Earlier on, with a bit better guidance from other people, I guess. But it is very important, and it's paramount that you should be able to market yourself. And I mean, there's so many different ways you can market yourself. It's not saying, you look at someone like Conor McGregor, he's the golden egg at doing it, but you don't have to be exactly as Conor McGregor. There's so many different ways you can sell yourself. Not everyone wants. And sometimes for me, it looks a bit cheap and nasty when you copy someone else. So there's so many different ways you could market yourself, but you got to try and stay true to yourself and be a bit more, let's say, stand up from crowd, but in your own individual way. Otherwise, it's nothing worth being compared to someone else.
I agree with you. That's some sage advice right there from the man himself for all you young fighters out there. And a lot of fighters, they have certain skill sets that allow them to transition to the next phase of their career really well. You take a fighter like Hardy, who's had tremendous career, very talented fighter, but his analytical skills, they're just as good. People know him just as much now for his analytical work as they do for him as a fighter. So he's able to transition in and out of the game very easily. But you're right, it is a skill set. Not every fighter can you can give him a mic and have him stand in front of the TV. It's a different skill set.
Yeah, you do. You see that in the interviews, even inside the octagon. That's what I mean. That's why it's important to people trying to build themselves, because like sometimes you don't really get a lot of. This is how the sports build up really strong over the last years. It was the introduction of the Ultimate Fighter, because before that, it was really hard to relate to a fighter, because if you fought for 15 minutes, if the fight went the full distance, you only got to interview Joe Rogan only got to speak to the person who won the fight, and then he chats to them for maybe 1 or 2 minutes. So it's hard to really get your personality or anything across. So when the sport first hit the first spike was when it had the Ultimate Fighter, where people got to see fighters and started to relate to them in loads of different ways, like, he's really good, I like him, he's like me, or this guy's an absolute idiot, I can't wait to see him get beat. But you relate to things in different ways, So it is very important for fighters to build themselves and get the characters across. And you do see that some people are very, very good at that. You look, perfect example, like the Conor McGregor, very good at chatting, likes his sound of his own voice. And you get other guys, like maybe some Russians, and just go, me like to fight, me punch face, and don't want to say anything else. It's like, how could you as a fan go, I want to watch that guy fight again, even if he's an absolute killer? I mean, like back in the day, you have Fedor, he was the man, and he let the fighting dude talk, and everyone loved that way he fought and stuff. But he has a personality of a potato, like you don't really get nothing off from him. But it was so brilliant to watch him fight, just the way he was, because he looked like a potato as well. He wasn't really athletic, and he fought out kind of weight class that he shouldn't have been fighting at, and he was just smashing people, so it was really fun to watch. But he couldn't sell a fight in that aspect. But now with the sport, how it's completely changed, you do need to be able to have fans need to connect you in some way. If it's, okay, we had the same sort of upbringing, yes, but he had no parents, or yes, he was a foster child as well, or this guy had a really bad upbringing here, or this guy was into violence, or whatever, more you can get your story out there. And it's not always up to you. Sometimes it is up to the UFC to try and get your story out there if you have a good story to be told. But you need to try and get your story out there, if it's through your own social media or the UFC doing social media or something like that. You do need to get your stories out there to try and build yourself as much as you can.
Again, to make the distinction between your hardcore fans and your more casual fans, Max Holloway, in my opinion, he's one of the most talented fighters on the UFC roster right now. But I think if I asked any of my more casual MMA fans, most of them don't even know who Max is. So the sport still has a lot of opportunity to grow, and I think as it grows and as the management pushes the fighters to get out on social media and different mediums to tell their story and to build their brand, we'll get to know more of the fighters.
100%. I think it is down to the fighters individually to try and promote themselves, but then also the companies could do a lot more. And obviously they do try that with the Ultimate Fighters and all that sort of stuff, but I think they need to maybe revamp things a little bit different, and because that's been done quite a lot now, so it needs to do other things, I think, to try and get fighters' stories out there. I know they've got this Looking for the Fighter that seems to be quite fun to watch, so I'm doing different things. But yeah, I think the sport's growing so much now. There's so many fighters within the UFC. Even I'm like, who's that? Who's that guy? What, And not many. So many fight cards out there now. It's really hard to watch the whole undercard and then the main card, then the main event. So you don't really watch every fight. Is impossible. Where before, I remember when I first got into UFC, you could not wait until the next UFC was going to come around again. You're like, oh man, I can't wait. But now there's nearly sometimes two in a weekend sometimes.
Yeah, no, that's true. There's they do put on a lot of events. Did you ever? I do want to ask you some questions about how retirement has been treating you. But would that be something that interests you? Doing something like not like a tough or something like that, but some kind of media related thing that would help promote fighters?
I'm always listening to it. I'm retired, so yeah. Basically, I've got my things, what I'm doing, but I'm definitely always open to any offers to do with working within the sport. Any way I could help, the sport grow in any way, or even help the fighters who are there now. I'm definitely always. I love the sport. It's been a massive part of my life. It's helped me, provide for my family, put the roof over their head. So, yeah, and if I could put anything back, I'd love to. Obviously, I'm doing a few things of my own. I want to open my own gym in London. I want to do a GBTT, Great British Top Team. That's going to be one of my main focuses. But also, I do my own podcast as well. I have a podcast called the One Punch Podcast. It's on iTunes. I do it with a comedian who also does the commentating for ACB, a guy called Brian Lacey. So I do that. So there's things I'm doing. I'm keeping myself very busy. I actually say I'm probably more busy now in retirement than I was when I was a fighter.
Well, we'll be putting the information for your podcast in the description below. We encourage our listeners to go listen to that. I'm sure the fans would love it. The more involved you are, they have more opportunities to see you do different things. Did you know right off the bat when you retired that you wanted to kind of stick with the sport? Because you've talked about coaching and building your own gym. Was that you knew you wanted to kind of stay with mixed martial arts, not as a professional fighter anymore, but you wanted to stick with the sport even in retirement?
Yeah, definitely. The sport's been a massive part of my life. I've always been an athlete growing up, I wasn't academically that great. I was dyslexic and I found school kind of hard academically, but all I could do is wait to get out and play in the playground and that sort of stuff. So I don't have like a career to fall back on in that aspect. I haven't got an accounting degree or I'm a doctor or anything like that. So for me, definitely the natural thing, and what I would like to do is definitely stay within the sport. But at the end of the day, I do need to put food on the table, and if working within this sport in some way don't support me in it, I'm gonna have to do at the end of the day, as what any father would do, is support their family. So if it's even being a dustman and sweeping the streets, that paid the bills and helped my family, that's what I do. But obviously, I think I've done enough within the sport to live off it for a lot longer, and with what I want to do, I think I have the right mindset and the brain to succeed in my head, what I like to achieve.
So you said that you wanted to open up your own gym. What is the timeline for that like?
The timeline is basically I'm ready, because I coach at the gym I've been training at for many years in North London, but I actually live in South London, so it's a long way for me to travel up there. But I still go there and I coach other fighters still. But for me, it's a long way to travel, so I would like to open a gym near me. But it's just trying to find. You got to think about the real estate in London. One is expensive. Two, it's hard to come by sometimes. It's like trying to open a gym in the middle of New York. Every time there's any bit of plot of land or anything like that, people are just putting up houses there, That's what it's like, So for me, it's just trying to find the right location and the right sort of property. And as soon as I find one, I have everything else lined up, for my gym. I just need to find the location.
Let's just talk about some of like the more subtle changes. How often are you still training? It must be nice. You don't have to worry so much about your diet anymore?
Well, to be honest, I'm one of those lucky guys. I don't have to worry about my diet much ever, really. The only time I have to really diet hard was going down to flyweight. But for me, I don't go over 155, in shape or out of shape. I always walk around. I don't know how I do it. I always stay around that weight. I don't put on weight. But I'm still like, for me, I'm a very competitive person. So even like, for me, I'm still like going to compete through the fights that I coach. I want them to go on and win and stuff like that. So I'm very competitive in that aspect. And even when I open the gym, I just don't want to open a run-of-the-mill gym. I want to be the best gym in the UK, going to the best gym in Europe, and build on from that. That's what I'd like to do. But even in the meantime, I'm still I got a grappling competition I'm actually going to do on a show called Paharis, which I'm actually grappling against a former UFC veteran in Phil Harris as well. That's in August. That'll keep me competing in some way without getting punched in the face, So, yeah, I can still compete, but it's a bit nicer to be training because I want to rather than feel like I have to sometimes.
I think that we talked about how the sport is young. I think the next evolution in the sport and the fighters will come, I think now, as fighters like you are retiring and then you go back and you put what you've learned back into the sport by building a gym, by coaching, by training these guys, because I think the sport, at the beginning of the sport, this was a competition to find out what was the best style of martial arts, which martial arts was the best style to win a fight. And then it's evolved from that. We're learning that, like, no, there's things that we can learn from different martial arts. And now it's just about who's the best fighter on the planet. Yeah. And I think the way we get to those guys is people like you will be able to train them, because one, you would be a coach, but you'd still be in shape so you can actually put some of that stuff into practice so they could see it. But also, like, you'd have a game plan from the ground up of what to do for the entire sport. I think in many ways, the sport, even now, it's still very compartmentalized. If you want to work on your ground game, you go over to your wrestling coach. If you want to work on your striking, you might go work with your Muay Thai coach. But wrestling and MMA wrestling is different, and the way you strike in Muay Thai is very different from the way you would strike in martial arts. It's its own skill set. So it's going to be coaches like you that really know how to put it all together.
Yeah, 100%. I'm with you on that. As in, like, before, like you said, when it first started, it was styles versus styles. Now, within its own right, MMA is its own style. Where for me, like, in straight out wrestling, I'm garbage. But you saw, like, with my fight with Demetrius Johnson, I out-wrestled him completely and took him down like 10 times in one fight because it wasn't a wrestling match. If it was a wrestling match, he would have beat me hands down. Because it was an MMA fight, it was a lot different. There's a lot more variables. You have to worry about the punches, you have to watch your level, and loads of different things. So, yes, for me now, also, as long as I've been in the sport, where you see that people get so much better so quick is because there's been years and years and years of trial and error. This works. This works. Actually, no, I don't. Now I don't work anymore. Don't do this because if you do this, this happens. There's been so many people like myself who have been in the sport, and now when there's some guy fresh off the boat comes into the gym for the first time ever, he's learning grade A techniques. Have been tried and tested over the years, so they're getting good really quick because they haven't got that crappy kung fu kind of bad habits or something like that. They come into the gym as a clean palette, and you're going, this is how you strike for MMA, this is how you wrestle for MMA, this is how you do jiu-jitsu. Because you're right, back in the day, you used to go to this gym to do your BJJ in a gi, then you go to this gym to do your boxing, then you go to this gym to do your wrestling. And you could get great wrestling in that place, you could get great BJJ in that place, and you get great boxing. But then you have no one to put it all together, So that's where I think for a long time coaches and places have been failing. They don't have those MMA guys who have been in there, done that, put it all together at the highest level, then retiring. You do see it a bit more now. People like Matt Serra, I think he's a good coach. There's Eve Edwards, I think he's another great coach. Mike Brown, I think he's the best coach out there. So there's so many people now who have retired and done MMA and achieved stuff within the sport, and they've now teach people MMA straight away.
Yeah, and I think it's a combination. One, the coaching is better because, like you said, they went through the process. So now they know what works. So they can fine tune that stuff. But also I think there's just a lot more athletes, which means there's a lot more, a greater talent pool to choose from. As the sport gets bigger, more young people are going to want to get into this sport. I know in America, I always tell the heavyweights that come onto our show, a lot of heavyweights, they get into the sport much later in life, because I know in America, if you're a big athletic guy, you're playing football or you're playing basketball or some sport like that. But as the sport of mixed martial arts gets bigger, I think we're going to start seeing some of these young men, they're going to want to get into that sport early on, and they have coaches like you, or I also really like Firas Zahabi up at TriStar, who's a phenomenal coach, but these guys that can put together an entire complete game plan, not just this is what we do when we're standing or this is what we do while we're on the ground, but how can we deal with the fight anywhere the fight goes. We're going to see some really good fighters coming out. You just recently cornered Kyoji at Ryzen in Japan, correct?
Correct, I did, yeah.
You said that the fight culture in Japan is very unique. Can you expand on that for our listeners?
Yeah, for me, obviously, when I got into the sport, first of all, there was UFC, and also there was Pride, and I just love Pride. I love fighting for what it is. I love that you suck a kick in the head and you do everything. But it was like real fighting for me. So I loved Pride. So when I got to any sort of stage of fighting, I wanted to do a couple of things. One, to fight in Vegas, and two was to fight in Japan. I fought in Vegas many a times. I made my WC debut in Vegas, which was brilliant. And stuff like that, but I never really got to fight in Japan. So when I went over to Japan with Kyoji, I was happy I went out there, at least to be out there. I've never been to Japan before, just to be out there and watch fight. But when I saw the show Risen, oh man, they know how to do a production. It was phenomenal. I got my juices and my I had to have a word with myself quite a few times. I was like, I'm gonna fight here. I'm gonna speak to them and get myself a fight. I had to have a word with myself a few times because I still wanted to fight. I was like,
I got that itch.
Yeah, I really did. Just because it was such a great atmosphere. The production was amazing and stuff like that. And then I say the fighting culture out there is really good. So yeah, I did love it.
Just shot in the dark here, but if the money worked out and it was that the opponent worked out and everything came together and it made sense, is there ever a chance we'll ever see Brad Pickett in the octagon again?
If I was going to be absolutely honest with you, if I did, it wouldn't be any time super soon, because for me, I had a really, really good retirement. Right, and I'm a very proud person. So it's like if you're getting married, you have a really massive wedding, and then you get divorced in a month time, and then you go, well, I've had a new girl, I'm gonna get married. You kind of like conning people, It's kind of like, for me, I did make that decision to retire, 100%. So if I did fight again, it won't be anytime soon, and it's got to be under the right circumstances. 100%. I got to really want to do it and all that sort of stuff. And to be honest, the only reason I would do it would be for money. So there have to be like an offer. I'm like, holy shit, I can't turn this money down. But at the end of the day, because I'm a father, so I need to provide for my kids. So I wouldn't fight because I want to fight. It'd be fighting because, holy shit, that's a lot of money. I could earn that from my family. I can fight. So that's the only reason I would do it. So, but the money was what the figures were going in my head. I don't think anyone would pay me. So I don't think I'd ever really be in that situation.
Well, we could always hold out hope. So someone's about to come make you a massive offering. Go fight on that money weight card for Conor and Floyd. So
yeah, man, I wouldn't mind doing a boxing match. On that, and I'm just box on that card. because I fucking earn a lot of money doing that. Yeah.
Oh, for sure. Talking about boxing, did you catch that Horn Pacquiao fight?
No, I didn't. It's one of those things I need to go back and watch, because I really wanted to watch it, but I had prior arrangements that evening, so I couldn't watch it. And that Sunday, well, I would have watched it in the morning. I was busy as well, so I was gonna, one, I know the result, and two, I hear about all the like a lot of people saying he won, a lot of people saying he lost and stuff like that. So for me now, I definitely want to watch it back just to see what my thoughts are on it. So did you watch it yourself?
I get the outrage. I don't know if this is it. I don't know. Pacquiao's kind of a weird figure to me. A lot of fans are speculating whether or not he should retire. He's sort of retired before, but then I also agree with you. I think it's easy as fans to say that. We're not the ones that are in the situation. We don't know what he's going through, the different things. It's really easy for me to sit here and go, oh, maybe Pacquiao should start thinking about retirement. But I mean, from my eyes, I think he won that fight. So
yeah,
I don't know. I don't know. It's hard to tell someone he should retire when you think he just won that fight.
Exactly. That's what I mean. It's easy to say you retire when someone loses, but when someone keeps, like Dan Henderson, when he retired against Michael Bisping, he would never have retired if he beat Michael Bisping on that belt. 100% guaranteed that. I know, because he loves fighting. So that's the reason I retired, because I was losing fights. And even in my last fight, when I announced my retirement, I was winning the whole fight. And then I ended up getting a head kick in the last minute of the last round, and then I'm getting stopped, So, like, yeah, so for me, that sort of impacted my fight there. When I was younger, I would have ate that like it was a biscuit. It would have been nothing, I mean, like, but now, with my later in my career, those type of shots were dropping me. So, for my health, it was just made it right for me to retire. And also, I should have been that guy in my head. I'll be that guy in every area, but I still got beat. So it's like, okay, now it is definitely time for me to move on.
Yeah, no, I think I think the fans really respect you for that. Like we said earlier, it's a hard decision to come to. The level of competitor that you are, to have that conversation with yourself and come to the conclusion that it's time to step away. Even though it's not everyone, when they retire, they get to still stay so involved with what they were doing before. But it seems like you're still very much involved in mixed martial arts. One other question, you just mentioned Michael Bisping and his fight with Dan Hendo. Who would you like to see Bisping fight next?
Honestly, Yoel Romero. Well, obviously the winner of Whittaker, Yoel Romero. That's what I would like to see.
I don't think that's an easy fight for Romero. I think Whittaker is a very talented fighter.
I do as well. So, but the winner of those two, I'd like to see fight Bisping. Whoever wins that fight, that's who I want to see Bisping fight next.
Yeah.
So, honestly, because I like Bisping a lot, but being the number one guy in the weight class, you should, to be honest, fight anyone. You shouldn't be able to pick and choose your opponents.
And I believe that's for an interim title, correct? Whittaker and Romero?
It is, yes.
So that's just strange to me. Like, why not just say this is the number one contender fight, and the winner is going to get to fight the champion? Why do we have to have an interim belt?
It's because that's how the UFC is a little bit nowadays. They think to sell pay-per-views, they need to make a fight for a belt, So if the champion's not available to fight, they have to make an interim belt. It's just the way. I don't know if they think the casual fans are that dumb, or the casual fans are that dumb where they think, now I'm going to buy a fight between Aldo versus Holloway because now it's for a belt, even though it's an interim, that sort of stuff, like when they have all these interim belts where they give out belts like candy, so you don't know who actually is the champion, who's got what belt, what's this, what's that, So it does make it very confusing sometimes, Yeah, so yeah, I think there are too many belts flying around now, but that's what they feel sells a card sometimes. They need to have for them to do a pay-per-view now, every pay-per-view has to be headlined by a belt, and if there's no title fights ready at that time, they need to try and make some sort of interim belts in some way whatsoever, because if no one's ready, it's because some champion's injured for some reason or whatever, so they have to bring a belt in. That's my opinion. It may be different, but that's what I feel.
I think it kind of waters it down a little bit. It's like you look at the sport of boxing, and when a guy comes into a ring, he has like 7 titles from all these different organizations. I don't know. I think if they want more belts, maybe we should have more weight classes.
Yeah, that's true. But then just got touching back on boxing thing. That's why I always found boxing very confusing, because there was so many belts out there. There was WBO, WBC, WBA. There's fucking whatever. You never knew who was the best guy in the world because there were so many different belts. So, because there's all these different belts, and sometimes the best guys won't fight the best guys because loads of politics and stuff. That's why I like the UFC, because if you want to watch the best guy in the world, you watch the UFC and you watch the person who holds that belt is the best guy at that weight class. So for me, that always made it a lot better. So for me, now there are loads of belts within the UFC now. It kind of, for me, waters down to what that belt brings, to that person, the meaning of that belt. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I agree with you. But I also think more weight classes would be. I don't know where. I think where I would add it is actually I'd like to break up welterweight. I don't know why we went from 155 to 170 to 185. That's a huge jump. I think there are some guys that are smaller welterweights or some guys that are slightly bigger. I think it should be broken up. You should have a 165 and a 175 division. But
also you look at 185 to 205. That's 20 pounds as well. That's the biggest jump.
Yeah, I don't know. 185 is. That's like, it seems to be a big jump. It doesn't seem like there are too many guys that fight at 185 and up that could really realistically go down a weight class. They all seem to be similarly built guys. Yeah. I know Anthony Johnson, I don't know how he did it, but back in the day he used to fight at welterweight, and then he ended up having his most success at 205. But all of those 185 guys, I think they easily can fight at light heavy. It's almost like if you're 185 and up, all of those guys are fairly the same size. So
yeah, they're all big.
Yeah, they're all big. I mean, I don't see a problem. I think Luke Rockhold could fight at 205, no problem. I think Michael Bisping could fight at 205, no problem. So
he used to fight at light heavy back in the day.
Yeah. So
when he first got into UFC, I think it was light heavy.
Yeah, that would be fun. There's a lot of fun fights that you can put up there if you mix up that 185 and the 205 division. All right, we're going to move on. This is a part in the show, we call it the speed round, where we face to facts. I'm going to ask you a couple quick questions. First one: if I were to come over to England to visit you, where would you take me for a bite to eat?
To a pie and mash shop. Yeah. A pie and mash shop or a local pub.
Local pub, which one?
Which pub would I take you to? It would have to be on a Sunday to have a really nice Sunday roast. So say maybe the Royal Inn on Victoria Park.
Very cool. Now, would you rather face 1,000 spider-sized cats or one cat-sized spider?
One cat-sized spider.
Really? Man, that would be frightening.
both are frightening, but I think 1,000 of anything is like, even 1,000 ants is pretty nasty. So and cats do have sharp claws, and I think if there's just one thing, I'd be able to leg it pretty quick away from one thing, or get away, or even kick it or whatever. So one target's a lot easier than 1,000.
All right. I like it. I like the reasoning there. Very strategic. What is the most ridiculous fact that you know?
Ridiculous fact. Oh, come back to me on that one. I'll think of that in the background. What's ridiculous fact?
Okay. Your nickname is One Punch. Have you ever heard of a show called One Punch Man?
I have. I get tagged in that shit all the time on Instagram. People always ask me, "Are you the One Punch Man?" I'm like, "No, I'm not anime in a character. I'm human. So no, I'm not the One Punch Man. So yeah, I know exactly what it is."
That's hilarious. Favorite fighter of all time?
Genki Suda.
And why is that?
Well, it depends. If you want to go in all time in all combats, it'd be Mike Tyson. But in MMA, it was Genki Sudo. He was a guy I loved watching back in the day. He was a very good showmanship. He used to do, and he was so fun to watch. There's so many great fighters now, obviously like Conor McGregor and all that sort of stuff. But he was a pioneer back in the day. Even like when he used to do his walk-ins and stuff like that, they're very good. And after one of his fights, when he held that big flag with every flag on it, saying we are all one. Which I thought was really cool, which I do find as a human race, we are all one. I know there's different ethnics and religions and stuff like that, but at the end of the day, we are one species, so I think we should all pull together a lot more.
What is the best insult you ever heard in your mixed martial arts career?
To me or to anyone else?
Just in general, if you ever heard like someone trash talking, like either backstage or something like that, or in the gym, what is the best insult you ever heard?
I don't know. The one that kind of standing out to me was like when Conor McGregor goes, "Who the fuck is that guy?" Really made me laugh because like of course he knew who Jeremy Stephens was, but it's just him saying that was comical. The timing was amazing.
Oh, I felt so bad. You could tell Jeremy was crying inside.
You can't. Yeah, because like it's so weird. Because Jeremy's been around like way longer than Conor McGregor, and then Conor McGregor just came along and made a massive star of himself. So it's like he's like biting himself, thinking, "Where the fuck did this guy come from?" And now he's like saying, "Who are you?" kind of thing. It was very funny.
It was. What do you consider your greatest accomplishment?
Being a dad.
Okay.
That's being a bit, kind of normal. But like, I don't know. My greatest accomplishment, doing what I've done within the sport. Like when I first ever started anything in life when I was younger, I was a very athletic kid, and I always said to myself I was going to be a professional athlete in something. Me being a normal kid, I always thought I was going to be a professional footballer. That never worked out for me, but in some ways I'm glad I actually achieved what in my head when I was younger said I was going to be a professional athlete.
Yeah, I think you definitely accomplished that. Had a great career. What is your favorite fictional character? It could be from a book or a movie or a TV show.
Darth Vader.
Darth Vader, I love it. Why Darth Vader?
I don't know, it's the only thing out there where stormtroopers as well is where they're just so cool. I mean, like, you do anything, if you walked anywhere and you saw someone dressed up as Darth Vader, you automatically got oh, that's pretty cool. You don't know why it is, but it's always that way. Like even on my what you guys call a bachelor party, my stag do, what we call it over here. In England, we do a lot of different things. A lot of people dress up as fancy dress and go out on a night out in England, where most Americans have bachelor parties and just have loads of strippers and all that sort of stuff. So it's normally quite different. But in England, like normally we all go out in fancy dress, and normally the stag, the guy who's getting married, is dressed up completely different to everyone else. So for my party, what I decided to do, I was going to dress up as Darth Vader, and all my friends, 30 of them, was dressed up as stormtroopers, and we went out on a night out in a town, which was pretty mental, So you imagine walking down the street after coming out of the pub, seeing Darth Vader walking down the street with 30 stormtroopers. We definitely turned some heads that night. Yeah, that was fun.
That has got to be one of the best things I've ever heard. That's incredible. That is how you do a bachelor party. That is awesome. All right, we're gonna get maybe a little social commentary here. What are your thoughts on Brexit?
A backward step in humanity. For me, it's like I don't like to get involved in too much politics, but like I said, I think we're better all as one. We're stronger as a team just in life in general. Rather than just it's like being a football player, being Cristiano Ronaldo is really good at Real Madrid. Real Madrid are a very good team. But if he leaves that team, it makes that team weaker, and he can't play football on his own. That's how I kind of see it. So I just felt, we should all pull together, rather than just leaving everyone.
I think that's very well put. Obviously, we are dealing with our own things stateside. Yeah. So, all right. So as we know, fads, they come and go. Sometimes it's hard to recognize if you're participating in something permanent or something that's just temporary. What is something that you find that is very popular right now that we're going to look back on and go, man, that was really stupid?
Right. Let me have a think about that one. Something we're doing now that we look back and think is really stupid. A lot of... I don't know. We do a lot of stupid things, I guess. I don't know, but we're evolving so much as a race. Like every year and every day. So like some of the things we used to do, like old dentist sort of work back in the day, used to be, like crazy when you look back at it, what they could do now. So I don't know. I think probably driving cars. We'll probably look back in the older day thinking that was stupid because now we've got these flying things or something, something strange. Or so maybe something like stupid like cars.
I could definitely see that, especially if we start switching over to a more automated system.
Yeah, definitely.
Like
a motorcycle or motor car. I think it's going to look like that was pretty stupid and polluted the earth when we can have these electric cars or something like that.
Yeah, I could see that. Like in the future, someone looks back and they're like, "We used to let 15-year-olds operate a 2-ton vehicle, unsupervised. That might be dangerous." All right, if your life had a motto, what would it be?
You only live once, and fortune favors the brave. There you go.
I like that one. That's a good one. All right, what mythical creature did you actually think existed when you were a kid?
I probably would have said a dragon. I probably thought that they had existed at some point. Like I would have thought they were like dinosaurs in some way. So I would say a dragon.
Last one. What is your favorite movie?
That's so tough. Tell me what genre.
Oh, geez. Let's go action.
Action. Okay. The Die Hard trilogies. I think they were amazing.
Oh yeah, Die Hard. That's like the quintessential action franchise.
Yeah, the Die Hards are really good, but there's so many great movies. Depends if you're talking about comedy, action, like a horror. It's such a broad thing. One of the great movies of all time is very cliche now. Was like The Shawshank Redemption. That's really good. And stuff like that. I also like The Green Mile. There's a lot of good, great movies out there.
You know what, Brad? I told you I was the last one, but I lied. I actually have one more. And this one's easy. This one's easy. I just want the % chance that you give Conor to beat Mayweather on August the 26th.
10 to 20%.
Whoa, that's very generous, actually. Most people have.
At the end of the day, you're throwing punches, mate. So I don't think he's going to hit Mayweather, But if he does, there could be, there could be something going on there. But, it's just that his mindset. It's really hard to back against Conor McGregor right now. If he fought Godzilla, you're probably thinking, I remember back in the UFC, so many times you doubted him, always doubted him, but he just has this crazy self-belief, that somehow, if you believe it as hard as he does, he makes it reality, sort of thing. As me being honest, I don't think he's going to beat pound for pound the most defensive fighter out there, and the best defensive fighter out there. How I really see the fight going is McGregor coming out being quite aggressive or whatever, throwing shots and all that sort of stuff, and then getting a bit probably tired by the end of the 6th round by missing quite a bit, and then getting a bit tired, and then Mayweather kind of maybe knocking him out. Even though Mayweather's not much of a puncher himself, but he still hits good, and I see something a bit like when he fought what's his name, Ricky Hatton, from England as well. Ricky Hatton started getting tired, and he started getting hit quite a bit, and then he got knocked out. So I think Mayweather win like in the 6th or 7th round.
I mean, you've done a bit of boxing yourself. What can McGregor do to give himself? Everyone says that he has a puncher's chance. It's you're throwing leather inside of a ring, so everyone has a chance to win. What can Conor do to increase his chances?
Just not gas himself out and not go too crazy. Don't let the occasion get to him, which I think he's very good at doing that. He's going to be a lot bigger, rangier guy, so you just need to keep him at the end of his punches. And I don't know. He probably got a few tricks up his sleeve. Obviously, he don't go for the takedown.
Yeah.
But the thing which I find it amazing, this fight, the mind games going in this is like, if this was a real fight in any way whatsoever, Conor McGregor would beat the shit out of Mayweather. But under this rule set, Mayweather stands the much bigger chance of winning. So if I was Conor McGregor, to get inside Mayweather's head, all I would be saying is, okay, we're fighting your little rule set to keep you safe, but you just know out there, if me and you are fighting over a pig, I'd be eating a ham sandwich, So, like, that's the thing you could say to get inside Mayweather's head, because that's exactly what I'd be saying. I'd be getting in Mayweather's head saying, yeah, we can find your little rule sets, but if me and you are fighting, to the death, I'd kill you, I'd take your wife, whatever, I could do whatever I want, in a real fight, and 100%. In my eyes, he would beat Mayweather 100% in a real fight, So, in a bit of you got to think, fighting in general is very, masculine, So, Conor could easily dent Mayweather's masculinity by just prodding that fact that if it was a real fight, I would beat the shit out of you.
I absolutely agree with you. And to your point earlier, he will continue to be smart if he can limit his exposure to Conor McGregor pre-fight, because I think that's Conor's domain, and that's a great opportunity for him to get in Mayweather's head. And I also think this is the only guy that could say that and really mean it. I almost feel like all of his other opponents, Mayweather's opponents, I don't know if they actually thought they could beat him even in a real fight. But I think Conor, he's like, no, if this were a real fight, I would beat you.
Yeah, he would, and no one out there is even doubting that fact. I don't even think Mayweather would actually honestly believe that he could beat McGregor if they fought in the street,
Yeah, I think whenever you have something like this, it's a little crazy. A guy that doesn't even have one professional fighting arguably the best boxer of our generation. Not too many people are going to give Conor a chance. You said not to gas himself out. What do you think of him just going out there and unloading first round? Just, I'm not going to be able to, because I think boxing cardio, that's another thing. It's very different than MMA cardio. I have no doubt that the guys that fight in the octagon, that their cardio levels are of elite athletes, but it's a different type of cardio in a boxing match.
It's a lot harder to hit the opponent because you have these big gloves. One, you're wearing, and two, you're using to defend yourself. So it's a lot harder. So as a fighter, you could easily go up against the ring and just defend and like move, bob your head, move. punches kind of glance off you, they don't really hit you. But in MMA, you can't do that because you're throwing 4-ounce gloves. Where if I had a high guard, even a 4-ounce glove will come underneath and in the middle. It's impossible in MMA to just turtle up and defend yourself very well. So you have to defend yourself with movement. In boxing, you don't have to do that as such. You can stand there on the edge of the ropes and just roll in shots, with your shoulder protecting your chin and stuff like that, which Mayweather is very good at doing. Makes people miss all the time, and then counters them, makes them miss, counters them. So yeah, boxing is a complete different sport. I think Mayweather will beat him in a fight. Even if it was a boxing match in 4-ounce gloves, maybe, that would be different.
That would be different. It would have been fun to see some sort of hybrid rule set be implemented. I thought it would have been really fun if they just allowed all hand strikes, like spinning back fist, everything, as long as it's a hand strike. No kicks, no takedowns, but allow him to go hands, elbows, everything. Allow him to attack in the clinch. Just some kind of hybrid rule set would have made it a little bit more interesting, because
a bit like when Muhammad Ali fought that guy years ago in Japan or something like that. That was a weird one, I think. Yeah, where?
Yeah,
I think he fought like some sort of sumo guy or something in Japan.
Yeah, it's just, to me, it's going to be billed as this is the fight for the king of combat sports. To me, a little bit of it is, this is MMA's statement moment where our big star is on the same stage as one of the biggest, not just combat sport athletes, but just Mayweather's arguably the biggest athlete just in general on the planet, and he was able to position himself, make himself big enough to where he was a viable draw, and now he's got this match against them. So
yeah, but that alone has been an absolute monumental task. Like you'd never think that in a million years this is even possible. But it is. It's happening. It's just freaking crazy to even think that this was ever going to happen in any way. So yeah, it just shows the star power that Conor McGregor actually has.
I think in the casual fans' minds, this is exciting because of the two big names. I don't know how great the fight is actually going to be. To me, Conor versus Floyd, it's a lot like having Ashton Eaton against Usain Bolt and saying, let's answer the question, who's actually the best athlete, and we'll determine that by a 100-meter dash. We're saying who's the best combat sports athlete, but then we're doing just boxing. So I don't know how much we can get from it, but I do think Conor is a little bulletproof in this matchup because I don't think a lot of people are giving him a shot at winning. I think if he survives it, maybe gets in a couple good hits against Floyd, he looks good.
Of course. I don't think he's not going to lose in this in any way. He's going to get a massive paycheck, and he's fighting the guy in his territory, like in his rule set. He'd always afterwards say, hey, look, just do the same thing again, just wear 4-ounce gloves or something.
Yeah, I don't think Floyd's gonna come over, and I don't think he's gonna step into Conor's world. That's just a gut call. Do you think after this Conor is done, or do you think he'll come back and have a couple more goes at defending his title in the UFC? Because this is a massive payday.
Of course, but for me, it's like even like Mayweather. These type of guys, they're going to earn crazy money, but you think they have crazy lifestyles as well, so they need to feed that beast. So they need to fight to earn this sort of money, to spend that sort of money that they're spending. When you're going out there spending like hundreds of thousands of pounds on a watch, that's going to catch up with you if you're not earning that type of money. So this is why even Mayweather's fighting again. He retired before, but now he's fighting because, I'm going to earn shitloads of money. So it's hard. When they have that sort of lifestyle, you got to feed the beast.
we're gonna wrap this up. I know that it's really late your time. We really appreciate you doing this with us. I think if you want that money fight, maybe you should start campaigning for that crossover match with like a Lomachenko or something like that. Let's get a Lomachenko versus One Punch Pickett going on.
I'll let you start the campaign then. I'll just turn up on the night.
Fair enough. Brad, you truly are a legend of the sport. You're always humble in victory, gracious in defeat. You're adored by fans all around the world. Good luck in your match in Polaris in August, and best wishes in all of your post-fight endeavors, opening your gym, coaching, all of that stuff. And truly, thank you for coming on the show, my friend.
Much appreciated, guys. Thank you for having me.
We want to thank Brad Pickett once again for taking the time and coming on our show and chatting with us. It was such a pleasure getting to talk MMA with him, and we wish him the happiest of retirements. Guys, I always love hearing from you, so if you got something to say, why don't you tell us in the comments section below, or you can tweet at me at FaceTheFacts22. If you like this episode, why don't you give us a thumbs up? And for the latest and greatest in all things BBYK, why don't you hit that subscribe button? If you haven't already, go like our Facebook page. That is facebook.com/broisbros. And until next time, guys, we are the Bros, you know.